Whoa! I don't think I even want to hear your story.
All of you must hear the Scarlet Spider story.
So he's like, oh, wow, my clone died. Oh, my goodness, what a crazy random happenstance.
Is it the real one that died and the clone that... No.
Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying-Model-Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest video podcast. And today, I am joined by my good friend Kertrice. Kertrice, welcome to the show.
Hold on, you are good. That was a beautiful introduction.
Oh, this ain't my first rodeo.
Okay,
And having said that, I think just one rodeo is a very short, small number of rodeos to expect someone to be good at something.
True.
Yeah, but nonetheless, this is like my several thousandth rodeo. I've done this several times.
You're great.
I tried changing the intro to... This is the shorter version of the intro.
Really?
I didn't even tell you to take off your pants and crack a beer. That's another thing that we do. And then I stopped doing it because I was like, that's a bit lowbrow, isn't it? And so I took it out. And then everyone was like, what happened to the pants and the beer? So I put it back in. So now take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. And the Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly. That's why we're here, Kertrice.
Ben Reilly, that's his name?
Ben Reilly is his name. I'm going to tell you why he's called that. I'm going to tell you also why he is arguably... No, you know what? Not arguably. This is my show. Yeah. He is the greatest comic book character ever made.
Okay, I have high expectations now.
All right, so you are not familiar with this character at all.
No.
But you have seen Spider-Verse, the sequel, the second one,
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse. Enter the Spider-Verse, one of the Spider-Verses. He appeared briefly in that. He is basically known as the Spider-Man who wears a hoodie. Mm-hmm. That's his gig. But let me cast your mind back to the 1970s, all right? We're wearing flares, we got big old hair and big ideas and dreams of what's to come. And one man in the 70s was a professor called Miles Warren.
Okay.
And he was the high school science teacher of a certain Peter Parker. And also Peter Parker's girlfriend at the time, excuse me, let me put my teeth back in, Gwen Stacy. Y'all know Gwen Stacy.
Yes.
Absolutely. She is kind of the spider character du jour at the moment with Spider-Verse and all that kind of thing.
I love that du jour.
But in the 1970s, she was just Peter Parker's girlfriend. And unfortunately, she was not long for this world either. Yeah. No, because Spider-Gwen is something way off in the future.
Can we just take a minute? Because that just reminds me of the Amazing Spider-Man when we lost Gwen. And that was just... and it's still heartbreaking and it still hurts.
I tell you what, that movie was awful. But my goodness... Not Andrew Garfield, wasn't it? Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, they killed it.
Best ever of all time. That is my Spider-Man, and that is that. And I don't care about your opinions.
No
Obviously,
arguments.
I do care because opinions matter, but that's...
Did you know that Gwen Stacy was going to die when you were watching the
No,
film?
because I've never
You
watched
didn't.
the comics. And then my friend that I was with at the time, he was like, at the end... Well, it happens in the comics. I'm like, I didn't know, okay? And I was so upset. I was like,
why this is so fun.
Upset. Oh.
So Gwen Stacy, brown bread. And in the comic books, it happens a little bit differently. It's still at the hands of the Green Goblin, but the Green Goblin knocks her off of the Brooklyn Bridge.
On purpose?
On purpose. He kidnaps her, Spider-Man swings in to save the day, and unfortunately the Goblin knocks her off the bridge. But you know what the real... Oh, I'm so happy telling these stories for the first time. You know what the real tragedy is? The Green Goblin wasn't responsible for killing her. It was Spider-Man who killed her.
Stop. Before we even go on, which Green Goblin was it? Older Green Goblin or younger?
This was older Green Goblin. This was Norman Osborn.
That is
the
a grown-ass
original
man
Green
killing
Goblin.
a child. Okay, well, you
It
said
was.
it's not his fault.
So Green Goblin callously knocks Gwen Stacy off the top of the bridge.
Right.
She falls. Peter fires out the web line, just like at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. He fires out the web.
But did you see how beautifully that was done? That it was like a
Like it's
hand
trying to
reaching
grab
out?
hold
Oh
of
my
her.
God, that was-
Yeah, but you know what would have happened if it did? It would have broken her neck. Because it was
Right.
the fall stopping so quickly.
Right.
The artist, I think it was John Romita, or was it Steve Ditko? Fact check me on that one, comment section. But he wrote snap as the web line caught her. And Peter pulls her back up and Gwen Stacy is, she's dead. And she's never actually been brought back in the regular comic universe. Because Spider-Gwen is from a different universe, just like Spider-Verse. Right. So the actual 616 Peter Parker Gwen, she's never properly returned. Which is actually like kind of refreshing that a character actually stayed dead, which is very unusual.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, Peter...
Wait, before we carry on, why was she on the bridge in the comic? How did she get up there?
Because the Green Goblin kidnapped her
Okay.
to lure Spider-Man out.
Okay.
And it worked.
Okay.
Yeah. And then actually, because it will be slightly relevant later, the very next issue, Peter has his throwdown with the Green Goblin. He's like, yo, gloves are off now. Like, it's go time.
Kill my
I'm
girl.
straight up gonna kill you.
Yeah.
And they have this final fight. And of course, Peter, being the good person that he is, he doesn't kill the Goblin. But just like the end of the first Spider-Man movie from 2022, 2002. There you go. Whew. The Goblin is responsible for his own death. He sets his glider up to hit Spider-Man. Spidey jumps out of the way and bajam, he gets impaled. That's the end of Norman
karma,
Osborn.
ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. His karma ran over Spider-Man's dogma. And that's how we end that little issue section, which I wasn't even planning to talk about. We won't go on a few tangents here.
Yeah.
But you know who else was heartbroken about Gwen Stacy being killed? Professor Miles Warren, Spider-Man's chemistry teacher or biology teacher.
Well, I mean, she was an A student, right?
She was an A student, and he is a creepy Magoo, Miles Warren. He had intentions on this young high school girl that were not. They were not honorable.
Does he die?
Oh, just you wait.
Not that we like death. Not that we promote death.
No, but Miles Warren goes a little bit cuckoo bananas, and in order to facilitate us getting through this within about an hour or so, I will tell you, he happens to have a fine line in cloning. So even though he's only a high school professor, he's able to manufacture clones. That's his thing, that's his obsession, his science. He has mastered the art of cloning.
Why was he only a high school professor if that's where his level?
These are questions you don't need to answer because they're comic books. So he has his secret lair. He has clone tanks. He can grow people. He grows a clone of Gwen Stacy, and he grows a clone of Spider-Man. So now we have Peter Parker, the original, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a new Spider-Man, and also there's a clone of Gwen Stacy. What happens immediately to the clone of Gwen Stacy? I don't remember, but she basically disappears off. I think she kind of like, she finds out that she's a clone. It's not like some heartfelt reunion with Peter or anything.
No.
It's like, yo, I'm a clone. This is all weird. You know what? Peace. I'm out. And we'll forget about her. So we had the clone of Gwen. She goes off and just does her own thing. You know what? We'll actually
Never to be seen again.
We'll forget about her. She comes back at some different points as well, but honestly, not relevant to the story so much. But the other Spider-Man, he's very relevant.
Okay.
So we have this other Spider-Man, and the Jackal's like, ah, you don't know which is the real Spider-Man. You've both got the same memories. They have the same memories. So they both think they are the real Spider-Man.
No.
I don't know how he does it, but yeah, the clone wakes up and he thinks like, oh, I'm Peter Parker. What the heck am I doing in this? What's going on here? So there's two Spider-Men fight, and as in any classic comic book situation, there's a big old explosion, buildings fall down, all this stuff happens, and one Spider-Man wakes up and he sees the other Spider-Man looks dead. So he's like, oh, wow, my clone died. Oh my goodness, what a crazy random happenstance.
Is it the real one that died and the clone that... No.
So Spider-Man picks up the dead body. He's like, well, I can't take this to the morticians. That's going to raise too many questions. He dumps it in a smokestack and then just goes about his life. Yeah, it's like a tall chimney, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He dumps it in a chimney thinking like, this will never be found again. Like, I'll carry on with my life. And you know what? The whole world carried on with their lives. For the next 15 years, it was business as usual. In the comic books, throughout the end of the 70s, the 80s, the start of the 90s, we're reading Spider-Man comics, we're having a good time, he's fighting Dr. Octopus,
Do you
we're
remember
off
what
to the
issue
races.
was when this happened with the cloning?
This was issue number 145. Ha ha! I knew that.
Ah!
So there, you can see I'm showing some pictures here for reference.
Right.
We've got the two Spider-Men fighting, and we've got Miles Warren, who becomes the Jackal. He takes on this persona of the Jackal. Why? I don't know. Because what children are going to buy... Well, actually, I do know. Yeah, because what children are going to buy a creepy scientist
He looks
figure?
like an evil Grinch mixed with a goblin.
He is kind of an evil Grinch mixed with a goblin. That's actually a very astute way of putting it. Yeah, he decides to wear this jackal costume. There might have been some little references to, when I grew up, I was always afraid of jackals, so now I will dress as a jackal. But honestly, I never even knew about that. So maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Nonetheless, though, fast forward to the early to mid-90s now. Things in Spider-Man's life are not good. Okay, basically the world is getting a bit darker and a bit rougher because they were in the 90s. And Spider-Man's stories are getting rougher. They're getting darker. His friends are being killed off, bad stuff's going on, bad things are happening, and his life is reflecting that, and he's having a hard time dealing with it. However, he has one rock, and that's Mary Jane. They're married at this point. In the comics, they get married. Problem is, though, the editors of the comics didn't like this. The only reason...
Why?
I'll tell you, because I liked it. The only reason they got married...
Like...
Right? Editors from 1993?
Before I was even born.
Oh, man.
Okay, only a year before I was born.
Okay, there you go. Yes, the reason that Peter married Mary Jane was because there was a Spider-Man news strip, a comic book strip in the newspapers that I think Stan Lee was writing himself. It's cute. And they got married in the newspaper strip. And some bright spark at Marvel Comics was like, well, if they're married in the newspaper, they have to be married in the comics.
Right.
So they got married in the comics.
Right.
And now, the problem that Marvel now find is that Peter Parker now feels older than they really want him to be. He's a married man.
Oh, okay.
You know, he's not this high school, down on his luck type person. Right. He's a married man with responsibilities. So Marvel had this problem. Spider-Man was getting dark and grim and gritty, and they felt trapped by the marriage that he was in. They'd done all sorts of awful things to him. His parents had been brought back. His parents we thought were dead. They suddenly appear, and he's like, oh, my parents are back! And then it turns out that they were actually imposters that were set up by the Green Goblin before he died. And
off all these
Peter's
villains.
heart is ripped out again, and eventually he almost like quits on his human life. He's like, I'm just going to be the Spider. I'm just going to be a vigilante. Forget about being a person because I can't do that no more.
This is feeling very Miles Morales, both sides of the coin, right?
Yeah, oh, the
Turns to
dichotomy.
The Earth where the spider.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Very similar to Spider-Verse in the sequel. And what really finally pushes him over the edge, and I swear that we're getting to the point, is Aunt May. His beloved Aunt May falls into a coma. So she's in hospital and she's at death's door, and that's what makes Peter just flip. He's like, I can't do this anymore, and he just goes out into the night, and Peter Parker's gone. He is the Spider now. And Mary Jane...
Did he change his color as well? Still black? Dark?
You know what? He was in his red and blues at the time, and he stayed in his red and blues.
Oh.
Because, actually, this is really sweet. He was wearing the black costume through the 80s. And did you know the black costume was Venom?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I've heard.
Yeah, so you kind
I
of...
didn't know that it was actually Venom. I mean, from the Tobey Maguire.
Yeah,
Spider,
well, that's
right.
the same thing. In the comics, he wore the black costume for months and months without even realizing it was alive, and it was Venom.
Right.
All right, so the black costume became Venom,
right.
and Venom terrorizes Spider-Man and Mary Jane, his loved ones. Venom is scary when he first appears in the comics.
How did he come about?
Spider-Man was off in space. Wow, we might be here forever. Spider-Man was off in space, okay? And long story short, he was with the Avengers. He was having a space thing with the Avengers. Okay. And basically, this alien costume attached to him, and Peter being a little bit gullible or not really worrying, he's like, wow, this is like a space age technology.
Of course, typical Peter.
That's it. He's like, I'm not going to worry about this too much. I'm going to assume this is just a new space age thing. Right. It responds to my mental commands. Right. This is amazing. So it wasn't until, much later he finds out it's alive. The Fantastic Four, they study it, and Reed Richards is like, yo, that thing's alive, and it's trying to bond with you. Right. So Peter's like, wah! And he gets rid of it, and of course it bonds with Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock becomes Venom. And what's cool in the comics, which we never really got in the movies, was it's really a story of a Psycho X. Peter's black costume is heartbroken that Peter left it. So that's why it's Venom. That's what Venom...
So it was never really evil. It was just trying to bond, but it wasn't necessarily trying to do anything bad.
Yeah, the only problem was when it wanted to bond permanently. But really, in the grand scheme of things, that's not that bad of a thing.
Right, because it's not like it was trying to mind control him or turn him into
not really,
a bad
although
or evil
they kind
human.
of retconned that the symbiote does enhance your negative traits, which wasn't the case originally. But
kind of like a
actually,
Horcrux.
Yes.
Actually.
Harry Potter nerd. Yeah, you know. But yes, so long story short, too late. Peter had a cloth black costume that he wore after Venom became Venom. Right. Because he's like, okay, well, I still need a costume and this thing's kind of cool. Right. And actually, Mary Jane said to him that please don't wear that costume anymore because it freaks me out because Venom has been terrorizing us and I can't see you wearing that costume anymore. So he goes back to the red and blues, which then takes us back on track. Aunt May is in a coma. She's in hospital. Peter's like, I can't deal with this anymore. But someone is paying Aunt May visits at the hospital. Someone wearing a high school ring that was the same high school as Peter Parker went to. And then, of course, what happens? Peter finally comes to his senses. He goes to the hospital to go and see Aunt May. Who is he confronted by on the rooftop? The clone. Ben Reilly, the spider clone from 15 years ago.
So we did
back.
confirm that the person that died was the clone in the comics. They confirmed it was actually the clone, or we still don't know. No!
So, after being dumped in the smokestack, the clone wakes up. And he's like, oh my goodness, the clone has dumped me in the smokestack. I gotta go and reclaim my life. He climbs out, he goes to what he thinks is his house.
Right.
And he sees himself in the house with Aunt May and Mary Jane. And something just clicks in his brain. He's like, oh my God, I'm the clone. And he's like, a proper classic comic book. No!
But was he really the clone?
Maybe he jumped to conclusions too quickly. I don't know. So he goes off into exile. He's like, I have no life here anymore. Right. So he basically just packs up some belongings, hops on a bus, and he gets talking to someone. And then just before he leaves, the person's like, oh, hey, what's your name? And he says, my name's Ben Reilly. Because Ben, after Uncle Ben, and Reilly was Aunt May's maiden name. So Ben Reilly.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Yeah.
So Ben Reilly goes off, and in comic book time, 5 years pass.
Of course.
So in our real time, it's about 15, pushing 20 years
Really?
pass.
I
Yeah,
never knew
yeah.
that? That is fascinating.
Yeah, so Marvel Comics and DC, most comic book companies that have such a long lineage, they're on what you call a sliding time scale. So it's really kind of weird because Marvel Comics, you have to accept that some things just don't make sense because Marvel Comics will try and have the real life president. They'll try and mirror the real world as much as possible.
Right.
But of course, Peter Parker was Spider-Man when Richard Nixon was president.
Right.
And he's still Spider-Man when Bill Clinton and then Obama was president.
Suspense of disbelief.
Exactly. So, but you do it. It's called a sliding time scale. That's how it works.
Okay.
So it was 15 years for us, give or take, and 5 years in comic book life. So yeah, Ben Reilly is out in exile, but because he's such a softie, even though he exiled himself, he still kept contact with Aunt May because he couldn't tell her who he was, but I think he pretended that he was like some long lost relative, and he just kept in touch with her over the phone because he just wanted to hear her voice and still have that connection there. So he finds out that she's in hospital and he's like, I swore I'd never go back to New York.
But I have to.
I gotta go back.
My heart is breaking right now.
And of course, Peter, who's at the end of his tether already, finds Ben Reilly on the rooftop and he's like, Get out!
Right.
Get out of here!
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm lingering on this part way too long, but anyway, Ben Reilly, he's like, okay, you know what, I'm going. But guess who he runs into? Venom. So Ben Reilly basically gets sucked back into being a superhero. He was gonna leave, but dang it, he gets called to action, which is why we have the Scarlet Spider.
So he became the Scarlet Spider.
He became the Scarlet Spider. He didn't choose the name though.
Oh.
What happened was he only had a couple of spider. Oh please, actually, what am I doing here? There you go. You can play around with him. You can move him. Have some fun with that. So when he came to New York, being the responsible superhero that he was, he brought a mask and his web shooters and some like web ammunition.
Oh, so they
just
also
in case.
use web shooters that they made. It's
Homemade, not organic. Homemade web shooters.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he has to go into battle very, very quickly. So he grabs like a ski suit, a red jumpsuit from some mall, and a hoodie. And that's why it has this kind of makeshift looking costume because he had no intention of being Spider-Man. He was like, damn it, I've got to go be a hero. Okay, go grab this and grab this. Boom. Okay, Scarlet Spider. There we are.
Okay.
And it was the Daily Bugle who gave him the nickname Scarlet Spider.
Ooh.
And he was like, I hate this name. And everyone was like, that is a stupid name.
I like it.
Well, now we all do. Like, in the 1990s, I think his costume was voted as, like, the dumbest costume of a superhero.
Fair.
But now we look back and
now
we're like,
it's chic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ripped up hoodie, am I right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, Ben Reilly, he becomes the Scarlet Spider. And you know what? Peter starts to come back. into the light. Peter comes back from the edge. You know, he starts to reconnect with Mary Jane, and basically they get back together. And it's Peter and the Scarlet Spider, and they're okay. They're coexisting.
Okay? Then does Mary Jane know about?
She does, because Mary Jane knows all the business.
Right.
And there's one heartbreaking. I won't go into it in too much detail, but Amazing Spider-Man 400. Aunt May passes away, and it's beautiful. It's so, she wakes up in the hospital and she's like, oh, I'm feeling better. So she comes home and they take care of her, and she takes Peter to, I think, the Empire State Building, and they're at the top of the Empire State Building and they're looking out across New York, and she turns to him and she says, what does it feel like to swing above all the buildings like that? And Aunt May didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Well, in the comics, it was never revealed that she knew that he was Spider-Man. It was always him hiding. And she tells him that she always knew he was Spider-Man. But she was so scared of losing him and so terrified that something might happen, she just pretended that it wasn't. She just blocked it out. That's why she'd always see Spider-Man on the TV and be like, oh, that awful Spider-Man, because she just couldn't bear to think of him in danger. So she gives him her blessing to be Spider-Man. Wow. And then, she feels a bit frail, so he takes her home, and, she goes to bed, and of course then she passes away with Peter holding her hand on the bed. It's like, look at those goosebumps. Look at those goosebumps right there.
And your hair's standing up.
I know, right? It's legit.
Intuition. You always know. Don't run away from it.
Exactly.
It's a powerful tool.
But you know what was even more heartbreaking? Was that as she lay in bed dying and Peter's holding her hand, there's someone...
Which Peter?
The regular Peter,
right,
who's been there.
Ben
Reilly is outside on the wall looking through the window.
Stare.
Yeah, and Peter sees him looking, and he just shoots him this look of like, get out, like just get out. So Ben Reilly's got to climb up to the roof and just balls his eyes out on his own. And it's like, oh,
Peter,
my boy. Yeah, they're not there yet. They're not tight. They're not tight yet.
Fair.
So that happens, but at least now Peter is. He's reconnected with Mary Jane. Life is moving on. It's good. It's okay. We're getting better, basically.
Right.
All right.
But Jackal
resurfaces. Jackal reappears. He wasn't dead. He was just in a chamber regenerating and revitalizing.
Of course.
He comes back, which gives Ben Reilly another reason to stay in the comics. And then, of course, we're also introduced. I'll go very quickly. There's another shadowy, mean, badass-looking character who's stalking Ben Reilly, and that is a guy called Kane. We don't know.
I've heard of the
We don't know.
name.
Oh, you might have. We don't know who Kane is at this point, but he's just a boss, and basically he goes around. He murders Dr. Octopus. He murders Kraven the Hunter. He's killing all of these Spider-Man villains. And also, he's just dogging Ben Reilly. He's doing whatever he can to make Ben Reilly's life a misery. So this character, he hates Ben Reilly, and he seems to be protecting Peter Parker. And it's like, what is going on here? So eventually, he reveals himself as being a failed clone of Peter Parker. He's a third Parker brother, and his face is all Phantom of the Opera, all messed up. Because one problem that the clones have is clone degeneration. Eventually, they start to break down. The only clone that's perfect is Ben Reilly.
What?
That's why he's so special, because he was the one in a million perfect clone. All the other clones start to just deteriorate and eventually just turn to dust. So Kane is living on borrowed time at this point.
And he's mad about it because why did Ben
He's mad because what we find out is that after 5 years in comic book time and 15 years of our time, yes, you already knew it, Ben Reilly was the real Spider-Man all along. Ben Reilly, who went into exile, who couldn't see Aunt May when she died, he was the Peter Parker the whole time. He was the real Peter Parker. And this was because, in our real world here, a little bit of kayfabe, the Marvel Comics editors, they wanted a fresh Spider-Man, because they're like, damn it, Peter's got married now.
Right.
And if we divorce him, then he's divorced, which still ages him. We need a new Spider-Man. Boom. Someone's like, well, what if the clone was Spider-Man?
See, but why wouldn't the Peter Parker at that time, after seeing a dead Peter Parker, think, well, we have powers. So are they actually really dead? Shouldn't I just check?
Again,
Hello?
these are questions that would have made this story a lot shorter if they followed up on them.
Right.
But no.
The end of the story, then we would have had no story.
It's like, and also at the time, like Peter Parker's, he's a dumbass high schooler, maybe college. He's in college.
We forget sometimes just how young Peter is and
That's
was.
it, yeah, because he meets Mary Jane he meets Gwen Stacy when they're in college, which maybe, a college science professor, maybe he would have access to cloning technology.
Maybe.
It's an Empire State University. It's a prestigious New York place. They might have cloning facilities. Who knows? So anyway, we find out that Kane, because he was a clone, and because he knew that the Peter that we were following was actually a clone, he wanted the other. Oh, because he was the first clone. He was the first clone, and as soon as the Jackal, Miles Warren, got him out of the cloning tank, he was like, "Oh, my beautiful boy!" And then he saw a scar appear on his face because of the degeneration, and he was like, "Well, toss the baby out with the bathwater." So he tried to kill Kane, and Kane just escaped. But then he was watching the whole time, so he saw that it was the clone who took over Peter's life. And actually it's kind of benevolent of him, because he's a clone, he wanted the clone to have the life that he couldn't have. So he's like, yes, my clone brother. So for the last 5 years, when Ben Reilly was in exile, Kane was just making his life miserable. And he was like, don't you come back to New York. You ever come back to New York, I'm going to kill you. Come back to New York. Don't you dare. And Ben's like, I don't know why this guy hates me so much, but he really, really hates me. So also, while Ben is in exile and being hounded by Kane, Ben Reilly meets a lady called Janine Godby, who he falls in love with, and she's going to pop up later as well. So Ben finds love, but she doesn't come in until a bit later.
Whoa, but then what happens to MJ?
Well, MJ, again, this is where it gets so confusing. MJ's with Peter. This is Ben who finds
what
someone
I'm hearing
special.
is Peter then still stays with MJ.
Peter stays with MJ, which is lovely because MJ gets pregnant. And so
with the clone, though.
It is technically a clone's baby. Yes, at this point in time.
Right.
At this point in time. But also it's perfect because the editors want a new Spider-Man. So they're writing Peter Parker out. Okay, he's married, he's got a kid. Right. Guess what? They even have a bit where he loses his powers. So they're like, okay,
so
Peter is depowered, married, normal. And he goes off and lives with Mary Jane. And they basically get their happy ever after. Right. And Marvel get a new Spider-Man. So in fact, I will take the Scarlet Spider. Oh, that's okay.
Came out.
Oh, that's fine. This is actually, I'll tell you, we should have a bit of toy talk on this toy channel. This is a Mafex figure. Oh. And Mafex figures, they come with all sorts of accessories. So yeah, different feet, different hands, different heads. You pop them all off, do all sorts of things.
You can change them?
Oh, heck yeah. Scarlet Spider here. Oh, he's got all these different heads that you can interchange, and different lenses and types of eyes and things.
Isn't it crazy that his eyes look like Venom's eyes?
Well, I mean, that's where Venom got the eyes from. That's it took on the Spider-Man costume. Because actually, if the symbiotes just latch onto something normally, they actually don't have eyes like that. They have like a spiral that goes around their face. Yeah, that's a whole different story. We're not getting into the symbiote lore. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, and it sounds a bit creepy.
It is a little bit creepy. You wouldn't like it. It's a bit scary. Okay, but yeah, Mafex are great. They have all sorts of stuff. And what's great is that Mafex made here in Japan, so instead of paying crazy import prices, I can just buy them off the shelves.
And this one's got magnetic hands.
Yeah, so you can actually stick him to like the fridge or something. And yeah, it's really cool.
That is cool. Do I need to get one?
You know what? I think you do, because I mean, just look at him. Isn't he like the greatest action figure you've ever seen? Of course he is. No, he's the bomb.
Pretty boy.
But Ben Reilly, he's always been a bit of a fashionista. Because so Peter... Okay, so you have what's called the Clone Saga, and it goes on for years and years. And so you get Kane, he's one of the Spider Brothers. You get this character called Spider-Side, who's a fourth clone. That's just.
So there are many clones who try to come back and kill Reilly.
Yeah, this clone Spider-Side, he's working for the Jackal. He's not. He looks like Peter. He has Peter's memories, but he's actually he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's crazy. He's just a. He's
How
a bad
did he
dude.
get that right?
I think the Jackal just tampered with his DNA. Okay. He can morph and do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right.
Yeah, he's kind of a terrible character who I love.
So Kane's actually not that evil because
Kane's
surely Kane
not
would have
that
killed
evil.
Ben a long time ago if he would have
That's
wanted
right.
to. You know what I mean?
And what's actually really cool, like, again, if Ben Reilly is my favorite character, Kane is right second place there. Because also, this happened at a time where this was the first story of comics I ever started reading.
Okay.
So when so many people say that the Clone Saga kind of killed Spider-Man comics for a long time because it was so convoluted and so confusing, and it went on for years and years and years. Because the problem was, when it first started, sales went up. So it was only supposed to be a small story, but the editors were like, guys, you got to keep this story going because we are making bank here. We're selling, so you got to just keep the story going, keep new mysteries, new characters, new things. And they're like, we weren't planning for this story, and it became the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones.
Of course.
Because it's like, we don't know where we're going. We're just driving blind here. And also, even though it's all right,
It just got so cold from the shade.
so shady.
Oh my goodness. Right.
So,
That just ruin things sometimes.
What happened? You know, even though the sales were going up, people, can you imagine comic book fans finding out that the Spider-Man that they'd been reading about for 20 years was the clone? They were furious.
I would be so angry too. I would be heartbroken. Like, I wouldn't know what to do.
And this was
I'd
before
actually
this was before the days of the
my
internet,
comics.
so you couldn't even go online and complain. You were just like at home, just going.
by yourself.
You
or
could
with your
literally write.
mates.
You could literally write a letter to Marvel, but that's kind of it, you know.
Right.
So sales started to go down, and they had to be like, okay, we got to course correct.
Right.
But essentially, for me personally, I loved Ben Reilly because they did originally bring him in to be the new Spider-Man.
Right.
So in the stories, they're basically making Peter look as bad as possible, so that they can make Ben Reilly look awesome.
Right.
And it worked. And I imprinted on Ben Reilly like a baby bird. I was like, you are my Spider-Man.
Hello, baby
So
bird.
exactly. So actually, the first Spider-Man book I ever read started, the first page was 3 different Peter Parkers all looking at each other going like you I'm the so
So that's where that comes from.
that's actually
meme, kinda.
it's very similar to that meme.
Yeah.
But actually that took place long after that. Well, the meme is from a 1960s cartoon, and it didn't become a meme until modern day.
Of course.
So it's more of a coincidence. But
I
it's a
love
funny coincidence because as I was
Is
doing
it a
it, I was thinking like,
coincidence?
that
I don't
is
believe
a
in coincidences.
coincidence.
I believe in miracles.
Fate. Okay, so the Clone Saga is also kind of cool because, yeah, in order to screw up Ben Reilly's life, Kane commits these murders, and of course, whose fingerprints are on them? Ben Reilly's. But of course, it doesn't work because it's Peter's fingerprints as well. So
Right.
Peter ends up
Hello,
going to prison,
Kane.
and basically, Peter says, like, look, if you don't unmask yourself and reveal what you've done, I'm just going to go to prison, and that's my life ruined, which is not what you wanted. So Kane's
anyway.
like, damn it, okay, fine.
It's literally, sorry, another Harry Potter moment, a Dobby. Dobby's trying to save Harry, but is also endangering his life in all the weird
There you go.
ways.
So eventually it all gets cleaned up, and Peter is the clone, he's married, he's got a baby on the way, so he and Mary Jane move to Portland and leave New York in the safe hands of Ben Reilly, who becomes the Sensational Spider-Man.
But before, did they have a whole, oh my god, you're actually the real one, I'm the clone, we're never going to tell Mary Jane, okay, fine.
Oh, they
So
have,
we're gonna do
they
it.
have, again, this goes on for years. So there are scenes upon scenes of, oh my god, I'm the clone, you're the clone, oh no, Mary Jane, oh Mary Jane. And of course, Mary Jane's like, I've got a clone's baby, is this
Oh,
okay?
so she does find out.
Oh yeah, Mary Jane finds out, because
Okay,
she's in on it with everyone. Like,
Okay.
they're not hiding anything from her.
I love that. Do you
And
see
it's-
what happens when you work together with your partner?
And there's some really great kind of like domestic scenes as well, where Ben Reilly is talking to Mary Jane, and she's like, I don't like you because of like who you are and what, but it's not. But she's like, I know it's not your fault.
Right.
Like I hate you, but I don't hate you because I get it. You know.
Damn.
So there's some really good interactions
There's some
going
delicious,
on there.
complex things going on in this.
So
I'm gonna have to
complex.
wear. I mean, do I have to buy them, or is there? I know this is terrible, but is there nothing online where I can just start and read from the first?
There are some resources.
Okay.
I'll hook you up.
Please.
Because I'm trying to get more people into comics. So.
I mean, I love comics, but the first comics that my dad ever bought me were Archie.
Oh gosh, okay. Well, yeah, this
That
is a
has some
little bit removed. A little bit removed.
Yeah.
So Ben makes his new Spider-Man costume. He is the Sensational Spider-Man, and actually, I have one of the few.
The sensational.
He doesn't call himself the Sensational Spider-Man, but basically, Spider-Man has always had a a title. Whether it's the Amazing Spider-Man, the
Right.
Spectacular Spider-Man, Ben Reilly is the Sensational
Who
Spider-Man.
gave him the name?
Again, we'll put it down to the Daily Bugle.
Okay.
But also, the costume is... I love the costume because it's just it's the red and blue like Peter Parker, but it's just zhuzhed up a little bit. The
different
spider's
spider. The
bigger.
spider's always different.
He's got these kind of like half gloves as well that are like blue on a couple of fingers. And
I love that.
Yeah, he got the half boots as well.
I love that because you could also play around with slowly transforming him from this to this.
Oh
like
yes,
the
you can
actual
do.
models. That's
Oh yes, you can.
beautiful.
And this toy here is from a line called Marvel Legends, and Marvel Legends are cheaper than Mezco. They're a bit more sort of hard wearing. They're
But
a bit
this one
more
you're
like
not,
your
you're
toys.
not going to open up. Is it one?
Well, I don't
that
need
you
to
keep-
because
you
I
keep
got
it-
him right here.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
hello.
I'm that level of a nerd.
Oh,
I'm not gonna have just
I love
one.
this little. Look at him.
Isn't he? That's what I love about Spider-Man figures. Is the whole point is you can do as elaborate gymnastic, crazy
love
as you like.
that.
So that's my Ben Reilly Sensational Spider-Man, and this for me, this must have been like 1995. This was when all was right with the world. Peter was he had a baby, he was married, and Ben Reilly was Spider-Man, and of course that was not going to last. So unfortunately, the good times, they had to come to an end eventually. Peter and Mary Jane return to New York, and Peter starts to get his powers back. They start to kind of like short-circuiting. They're fusing a bit, but they're coming back to him.
Right.
In the meantime, the Clone Saga ain't over. There's still machinations going on behind the scenes. There are shadowy figures.
What happened to the other guy who
The Jackal?
The Jackal hired.
He got killed.
Jackal got killed by whom?
Jackal dropped from the top of a building in a big fight. So he got killed off.
With who?
He was fighting Peter Parker at the time, but Peter tried to save him. This is kind of cool,
course.
actually. So he's falling. Peter tries to save him with a web line, but Jackal, just out of spite, I think, he knows his plan is foiled. He just cuts the web line. But as he falls to his death, he screams, "When the dream is over, the nightmare begins." And what that actually was what was it called? A sub-hypnotic message that actually activated in Peter's brain because, he had this ability to kind of manipulate his DNA and stuff.
Right.
So then Peter, a couple of days later, once the dust is all settled, all of a sudden has an overwhelming compulsion to murder Mary Jane. That was the Jackal's parting gift. He was like, okay, well, just you wait. But of course...
What the hell? This is so dark.
But you know what finally stops Peter from killing her right at that last second?
So he does actually.
No, he doesn't. Because of the power of love. And it just ends with a big, big old hug. And it's like, oh, this is beautiful. Comics are so good. They really, really are.
Power of love, which is what also saved Harry, just by the way.
It's like, this is already more Harry Potter content than I was expecting for this Ben Reilly story. But it's okay, we're going to go with it.
That's really, firstly, that's so... Jackal sounds like the most... What happened? Okay, what hurt him that badly?
Exactly. He was obsessed with Gwen Stacy, and then when she died, blamed Peter Parker.
Of course.
for
Not
her
the
death.
actual Green Goblin.
Not the Green
person he
Goblin.
also kind of turned into.
But the Green Goblin was dead at this time.
Of course.
So there was no one to take revenge on.
Right.
Except Peter. And whoa, boy, did he ever do that.
Crazy.
Now, it's such a shame, actually, because if he wanted to take revenge on Norman Osborn,
Right.
he could have. Because Norman Osborn was alive this whole time. In fact, who do you think was secretly financing the Jackal? The Jackal didn't even realize it. The guy who was financing all of his machinations, all of his schemes, everything, was freaking Norman Osborn. The whole damn time, it was Norman Osborn behind the Clone Saga. So it all comes to a head. Norman, I mean,
How am I going to go to bed tonight?
I know, you're just like, what is happening
How?
here? This was meant to be the prologue, but just tell me when we've gone on too long. So, yeah, Norman Osborn returns. Pardon my language, he beats the piss out of Ben Reilly. And Peter's like, no, Ben. And Norman's like, why are you so worried about this guy? He's just a clone. Boom. It's like, you were the real Spider-Man the whole time, you dumbass. I just wanted to mess with your life. And I did. Yeah, Ben was the clone the whole time. It was all just machinations of Norman Osborn. Dick move, am I right? Yeah. So you can see in this image here, Norman Osborn just tosses Ben aside like a piece of trash. He's like, he's not important to me. The guy's a pawn. It was you the whole time, Peter. You were the one I was messing with.
So Ben wasn't the real.
Ben was never the clone. Ben was never real. He was always the clone.
So you tricked me too.
Well, it's
you had to.
It's called
then
storytelling.
That's right.
The big reveal. So yeah, and then of course in the final.
Obviously Kane didn't know either.
Kane didn't know either. So Kane was like, "Wait a minute." So I was hounding the clone the whole time. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me?
So who did he kill? The clone, Ben?
This you can see is a panel from the final fight with the Green Goblin,
right.
Spider-Man, and Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly's in his civilian clothes here, and Green Goblin tries to do what he did all those years ago, killing Peter with the glider. Ben jumps in the way, takes the shot to the back, and falls to his death. And that is kind of the end of Ben Reilly.
How did you feel when you read this?
Gutted. I was so gutted. I was so disappointed because Ben Reilly was my Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He was my Spider-Man. I was furious. But yeah, I had to just accept it. I was like, okay, I guess in comics, nothing ever really changes forever.
Remind me again what the Green Goblin's problem was with Peter.
That's always the crazy thing. Like, really, there was nothing specific. Norman Osborn took this goblin serum to give himself powers, to make himself strong and bad and tough. And Peter Parker, Spider-Man was the Green Goblin's nemesis. So
what was his backstory, Norman? Did he lose somebody? What triggered that?
Norman Osborn, I mean, originally he was just written as just a dick.
Yeah, man.
Just a billionaire industrialist, and then it is written to make him more complex. That at least the Goblin formula it causes schizophrenia. So actually, Norman Osborn, he's a dick, but he's not.
But he
evil.
wasn't that kind of dick. It didn't go that deep.
He's just a businessman who does business stuff. But it was the Goblin formula that it made it like he would. Oh, again, that was kind of a tragic thing as well. Again, I'm trying to remember here. Oh shoot, yeah. So it is the Goblin personality is like a separate personality.
Right.
So there's a time just before Gwen Stacy's death where the Goblin discovers that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And it's like, oh no, what's gonna happen? The Goblin knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. This is bad.
And obviously, and the Peter Parker and Norman didn't have a relationship, but they
kind of did because of Harry.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So very conveniently, comics being comics, Peter has a big fight with the Green Goblin, and Green Goblin gets hit on the head, and it's like amnesia. Green Goblin goes away, and Norman Osborn's okay, and Peter's like, this is a real moral dilemma, because he's like, I should turn you into the cops and tell them everything, but if I do, they might find out that you're Green Goblin, and then that might come back and you'll tell them I'm Spider-Man. So at the moment, you're Norman, you're normal, let's just leave it at that. And of course, that's, then later Norman has a relapse, becomes a Goblin again, and kills Gwen Stacy. So Peter's like, man, I should have. So that's real tragic there.
I should have.
I should have done this, should have done that. Yeah, but you didn't, pal.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And now Ben Reilly's dead. I hope you're happy.
I hope you're.
You know what? This is probably the geekiest bit of headcanon, though.
Wow,
okay?
right.
Ben Reilly. Because the editors at Marvel wanted to tell the fans, like, we're done. The Clone Saga's over. Right. They wanted to make it clear. So when Ben Reilly dies, his body kind of like disintegrates, like the clones degenerated. Right. But then there's Muggins over here going like, yo, Ben Reilly was a perfect clone. He wouldn't have disintegrated if that was him who died. So I'm just saying, okay, Marvel, this is your out here. When the Green Goblin first attacks Ben Reilly, you know what? He knocks him out, puts him in like cryo sleep or whatever. Then he just makes a new clone just so he can kill it in front of Peter for kicks. Because why would you kill a perfect clone? It's a 1 in a million chance of making a perfect clone. You're not going to kill it. You're going to put it in storage for later. And then he just cloned Ben again, so you got to have the fun of killing him in front of Peter.
And messing with Peter even more.
And that's why that Ben turned to dust. The real Ben is still out there in a clone tank somewhere. And when he comes back, it's over for all y'all, all right?
Oh my goodness.
Marvel,
I buy it. I'm here. I'm here with that.
I'm willing to take commissions, okay? I'm willing to take commissions.
I'm here for that. Why has there never been a Spider-Man versus Batman fight?
Oh, there has.
What?
One of the best comic books ever made. In
Tell me
fact,
Spider-Man wins.
well, first of all, I'll just give you the link to the video I made about it.
Okay, yes, please.
And also, of course, to be fair, Spider-Man and Batman didn't fight. They teamed up to fight the Joker and Carnage, and it was amazing. It was so good. I don't think Spider-Man and Batman have ever actually fought head-to-head, and I'll be the first to admit that if Batman has prep time, of course he beats Spider-Man. But if they just happen to bump into each other, I think Spidey's going to probably take it, because he's got his spider sense, you see. Good luck with those batarangs, pal. But anyway,
I'm not a fan of Batman. I'm sorry.
that's
Don't
a story
hate
for
me.
another time. That's okay. I like Batman, but I'm not a huge Bat fan. So Ben Reilly is dead. He's dead. He's gone, and that's it. Because the Clone Saga had left such a bad taste in everyone's mouth, basically. Marvel Comics were like, you will never mention this again. All new writers, editors, anyone, the Clone Saga is persona non grata.
Right.
You don't mention the Clone Saga. So for a Ben Reilly fan, I'm like, well,
That's it.
I guess
and
that's
I bet you're
it.
not the only one.
There are a lot of hardcore Ben Reilly stands out there.
yeah.
There really are. And about 10 or 15 years later, it gets a bit foggy and fuzzy. Maybe 20 years later. I'm getting so old now. It's terrible. It's terrifying. But we are introduced to the Clone Conspiracy.
What?
There is a story happening, and there is a new jackal. There's a new guy wearing an Anubis mask and getting up to all sorts of trouble cloning. And it's like, who's this jackal? And Peter is like, well, it's clearly
Wait,
just a
what
clone
made
of the
them bring
jackal.
it back? What made them bring it back after Persona non grata?
What's kind of great, being this age, is that now the people who read those stories growing up are the ones who are writing the ones we read now. So all of a sudden, the Clone Saga's cool again because the writers of Marvel Comics grew up reading it. And I'm like, yes, it's a good time to be alive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we get the Clone Conspiracy. Okay. Unfortunately, I was talking about these monkeys' poor wishes. The Clone Conspiracy ain't a great story. Oh. So we have all these clones, people who had died are returning, and people are like, how did this happen? And it turns out that, yes, there is this jackal character. Right. And everyone assumes it's Miles Warren until he takes off the mask.
Who is it?
It's Ben Reilly. And he's like, hello, Peter.
No!
And I was like,
don't take my Ben! No!
Yeah. Ben Reilly is back, and he's a dick. Hello there, gang. I'm sorry about the sudden stop there, but I had to draw a cut somewhere in that video because Kertrice and I went on talking for over 2 hours, and I went all the way through the Clone Conspiracy. We touched on Superior Spider-Man. We went all the way up to Spider-Man Beyond. All the stuff with Janine coming back, Ben Reilly taking over as Spider-Man. We went into, Lord help us, Chasm, and even touched briefly on Dark Web as well. We went all the way through the Ben Reilly saga. But I thought, you know what? That would be, if I saw that video on YouTube, I think, woof, 2 hours? You know what? I'm not sure if I want to commit to that. But 40 minutes? That's reasonable. So this is the first part of the Ben Reilly saga, covering the Clone Saga, basically the golden age of Ben Reilly. And if you'd like to see the rest of our conversation, then I'm going to upload that to YouTube and you can check it all out because it's such a good time. I, as any classic, well-trained, seasoned YouTuber would do, I ran out of phone memory before we even finished. So even that full one does cut off abruptly because once I start talking about my favorite comic book character, it's hard to stop. But gang, I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know because I love doing these two-person videos. So if you enjoy it, comment below. Tell me what you'd like to hear, what story you'd like to hear me talk about with someone ideally who maybe doesn't know that much about the characters because it's so much fun to state things that to comic book fans are just kind of obvious facts, where to those who are uninitiated are kind of mind-blowing moments and revelations. Such a good time. So gang, once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, I can't do my clicky thing with one hand. Keep displaying model behavior.
Coffee, big time.